Hello, in today's video we'll be replacing this window regulator assembly on this Honda Odyssey. And you can suspect the regulator because you hear the motor try and move, and that tells us the switch is fine and the motor's fine. So it's most likely the cable on the regulator assembly that has the problem. To get to the regulator, we'll have to remove the door panel first. So let's get started. First we'll have to remove the screw located down here under this little cover, which we can pop up using a flat blade screwdriver. Once you pop up the cover, you'll notice a screw, and for this we'll need a Phillips head screwdriver to remove it. When you remove the screw, you'll want to keep track of the size of the screw because there will be a few screws you'll have to remove on this panel. Followed by removing the screw on the door handle using the same screwdriver. Now we can remove the switch assembly by lifting the back part of it and sliding it back a little to unhook the front. And this is the hook section that grabs onto the door panel. We'll have to disconnect the electrical connections next. To do so, we'll want to press in on this tab and pull back on the connector. And we'll have to do the same on this bigger blue connector, pressing in on this tab as you pull back on the connector. Followed by removing the speaker panel using a flat blade screwdriver. Just lift it up and pull back on it. Poor speaker is completely blown. Let's remove the 3 screws holding the door panel using a Phillips screwdriver. Onto the second, and finally the third. Now let's remove the door handle. With the screw removed, we'll want to slide it forward to disengage the hooks. First we'll need to disconnect the door handle rod. To do this, we'll need to rotate the clip off of the rod to be able to slide the rod up and off. Followed by disconnecting the lock switch connector by pressing on the tab and sliding it off. Now we gotta pull off this cover. It's held on by a clip up top, so you'll want to pull straight back till it disengages, then up and off. We're now ready to pop off the door panel. You want to slide your hand under the front lower part of the panel and pull straight back, going along the bottom and the sides till the clips are off. Now that all the clips are detached, we'll have to lift the door panel up and off, but be careful because the door speaker will still be connected. To disconnect the speaker, just press in on the 2 tabs at the sides. And the door panel is now free to come off. Next we'll remove this bracket that's attached by 2 Phillips screws. Now to remove this water barrier, you'll want to pull it off slowly all around, being careful not to tear it. It'll have 2 clips up top to pop off. And as you're removing it, you'll want to push the connectors through. We can now see what the problem with this regulator is. The cable seems to be all twisted. Well, let's get to removing it. First, remove the motor's connector by getting behind it and pressing in on both sides of the clip. And this is the area you want to squeeze on to get it to pop off. Now we can disconnect the connector by pressing in on the tab and pulling them apart. And you'll want to push the connector through. For this next step, we'll have to remove the 2 bolts that are holding the window to the window regulator assembly. Here we can see one of them. For this we'll need a 10mm wrench or a small ratchet with a 10mm. You'll just want to break it loose. The rest you can remove by hand, but you'll want to still leave it bolted on by a few threads. Just about that much. Here we can see the next bolt, which you can reach through the speaker hole. But this bolt you'll want to remove completely. Now we can remove this other bolt, but you'll want to be careful not to let the window slide off the little notches that are holding it in place. For this next step, you'll want to lift the glass and use either of these two methods to keep it held up. I prefer this method to hold the window glass up. I find these work really good, but if you don't want to spend any money on this, or you don't have it handy like I did, you can use tape as well. As you can see, they hold on really strong, but come off easy with this little tab. Or you can also hold it up with tape. But for this, you'll want to make sure that the tape is holding on to the glass really well, and contacting it with most of the surface. Well, let's go ahead and remove the rest of the assembly. For this, all we'll need is a 10mm socket. On the bolts with the holes above, that also have the silver bow head, you just need to loosen the bolts. While the gold bolts, or the ones without the hole up top, you gotta remove completely. And all you gotta do is slide the motor up and off once you do that. Followed by removing these two lower gold bolts. Now we just gotta remove one more gold bolt and loosen the silver bolt. And with that, we can slide off the remainder of the regulator assembly and remove it completely. You'll want to be careful not to damage anything else on the way out. And this is our old damaged regulator assembly, which probably has the cable all twisted in the middle. We can now transfer over the bolts that we left on to the new window regulator assembly. You'll want to be sure to leave them loose so you can slide the assembly back in easily. After you do that, we're ready to install the new assembly. The first thing you'll want to do is slide in the window motor and install the remaining bolt, followed by hooking on the bracket and installing the remaining 3 bolts. Once you got them all hand tight, just tighten them up with the ratchet. Followed by tightening the 3 bolts that are holding the window motor. Now we can connect the motor's electrical connector. To make installing the glass easier, you'll want to connect the window switches connector, which is this blue one, so you can roll down the bracket to line it up with these holes, to make installing the bolts easier. This works for removal of the bolts too, if you can get the motor to lift it enough to line it up. And these are the bolt holes I'm referring to. You can now bring down the glass slowly and line it up with the bracket assembly. If done correctly, you should be able to see the threads through the holes. And we can now install the 2 bolts. Now that the bolts are on and tight, we can install the water shield, making sure that the holes all line up. Making sure that you put the connectors through as well. Next, install the bracket with the 2 screws. Followed by the door panel, not forgetting to connect the speaker. Now we can slide on the door panel, guiding on the lock rod. Pulling the connectors through into their corresponding areas. Now we can push in all the door panel clips. Clicking on the side mirror cover. Followed by the interior door handle, installing the door handle rod first and locking it in place, plus the electrical connector. Once you got that done, we can push and slide in the door handle to the left till it slides into place. Followed by installing the screw. Now we can reconnect the connectors to the window motor switches. Followed by sliding this into place. Lastly, installing the screw. Now we can click the cover back into place. And finally reinstall the remaining 3 door panel screws. And lastly, the speaker grill. Now we can test out the window. We should finally be working again. Well, I hope you found this video helpful and informative. If you did, please click that thumbs up button to support my video and my channel. And please subscribe if you haven't done so.